So football playoff season is upon us, and you're looking for a few easy recipes to make for these games. And by easy, you mean you don't want to f*** around too much in the kitchen, you want to focus on football. I assume you also want the food to be good. Today we're going to be making chili, a nacho platter, and pepperoni pizza rangoons. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like what I'm doing, and let's get to it. Okay, first let's make some chili. Start by placing a soup pot over medium heat, and to that add 20 ounces or 1 1/4 pounds of ground beef. And once that starts rendering, add 6 ounces of onion that's been diced into 1/2 inch squares. Add a relatively strong pinch of salt, and once the onions have been sweating and are slightly softer, go ahead and add 1 diced jalapeno and 2 ounces of diced poblano peppers. And if you want the chili to be a bit spicier, you can omit the poblano peppers and use 2 jalapenos instead and leave their ribs and seeds intact. And after a few minutes of cooking, we can add 1 tablespoon of chili powder along with 1 teaspoon each of cumin and oregano. Give it a stir and cook it for a minute or two, or until a little bit of browning develops at the bottom of the pan, but be careful not to burn it. Then I'm going to add 1 28-ounce can of tomatoes that I've pureed, along with 1 can of diced tomatoes that I've left whole and 1 can of kidney beans that have been drained. Add a few more pinches of salt to the pot, bring it to a simmer for about 15 or 20 minutes, and that's literally it. It's the easiest chili you'll ever make. I really don't understand why some people want to complicate chili more than it needs to be. It should be one of those simple foods that anyone can make, and this recipe certainly meets that requirement. Okay, let's go ahead and plate this thing up. Start by filling the bowl with some chili, and garnishing options are entirely up to you. I'm going with a bit of shredded white cheddar, some thinly sliced green onions, and a small dollop of sour cream. And that's it for this recipe. Let's move on to some nachos. Okay, now let's talk about some steak nachos. All you really have to do here is cook the steak, cut up vegetables, assemble it, and put it in the oven for a few minutes. But if you don't feel like cooking the steak and you want it to be even easier, go ahead and use one of these things. Alright, let's get to it. Okay, I lied actually. We've got one more step. We're gonna make a salsa for these nachos. This is entirely optional, and it is a bit of extra work, but I want you to know something.
Remember, gang, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra.
Okay, so to make these nachos extraordinary, we're going to split a jalapeno in half and roughly cut out an equal sized portion of a poblano pepper. Place them on a sheet tray under a broiler for about 5 minutes. We're just looking for a light toasting, not a deep char. This is what they should look like when they come out. They should be slightly wilted and have a tiny bit of browning around the edges. Okay, once that's out of the way, we can place the chilies into a food processor along with the zest of 1 lime, a small handful of cilantro, 4 ounces of sour cream, and a pinch of salt, and blend the mixture until it is smooth. Once you've finished all that up, scrape the contents into a Tupperware container and mix in 8 more ounces of sour cream. I do it this way because I've noticed the sour cream can become thin and runny when blending it too much. I'm not really sure why that is, to be honest, but adding a portion of the sour cream afterwards seems to be a good workaround for this problem. And this does make more than what is required to place on top of the nacho platter, so you are getting sort of a bonus recipe out of this video. Okay, now that the salsa is finished, let's go ahead and prepare the steak. I've got a small section of sirloin that I'm going to use. There is no need to go over the top with an expensive cut here. The more value-priced cuts are ideal for this preparation. All you need to do here is season the outside of the steak with salt and pepper, place a pan over high heat, rub a small amount of olive oil on the steak, and get a good sear on the outside of the steak. Steaks that are a bit on the thinner side actually work well here, because by the time the outside is seared, the inside will have come somewhere close to the mid-rare territory. Once the steak is seared, I've got a small amount of red bell pepper, onion, poblano, and jalapeno peppers that I will add to the same pan. This is an optional step, as you could leave them raw, but browning them slightly will add a bit more flavor to the final dish. Okay, let's put this thing together. Start by placing chips onto a sheet tray. Use whatever brand you like best. Then we can add our steak that we've cubed up, followed up by our vegetables, and finally top with some cheese. I'm using a mixture of Monterey Jack and cheddar cheeses, but you can use whatever cheese you like. Now we can place it into a 400-degree oven for about 5 minutes or until the cheese is melted. Be careful though, because the outer edges of the chips can become burned and turn bitter if left in too long. Okay, to finish this thing off, let's go ahead and top it with some diced Roma tomatoes and some thinly sliced green onions. And I've loaded some of the salsa into a squeeze bottle to finish it off. It did clog up on me a bit, but you can see what I'm trying to do here. If it does the same to you, just unclog it like I did and finish it off. And that's it for the nacho platter, so let's go ahead and make some pepperoni pizza rangoons. And we're going to start with an easy no-cook pizza sauce. Combine 1 8-ounce can of tomato sauce with 1 teaspoon of oregano, 1/2 teaspoon of basil, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon chili flakes, and 1/4 teaspoon of sugar. Stir to combine, and that's it. And to assemble these things, start by building a small workstation on your countertop. Lay out a wonton, place a small amount of pizza sauce in the center of the wonton, followed up with a few cubes of pepperoni and mozzarella cheese. Brush a small amount of egg wash around the outside and seal them closed, pressing out any air bubbles that are present. Do not overfill these things, as they can easily become difficult to close up when they are overfilled. If you want more filling, just make more rangoons. When it comes time to cook these things, a deep fryer works best, but we're looking for something a bit easier. You can use an air fryer if you want, but I'm going to use the convection setting on my toaster oven. I've brushed the outside with a small amount of oil, and they should take roughly 10 minutes at 300 degrees. I'm not going to get too fancy with these, just line them up on a plate and use the leftover pizza sauce for dipping. And there you have it, 3 easy game day recipes to feed your crowd. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for tuning in.